Have you ever heard the term Pyrrhic victory? If you've played a lot of strategy video games, you might have come across it, but it generally means that you're able to get the win, but you suffer a lot of losses in the process. You usually see it at the end of movies, right? The hero takes some punishment in order to defeat the bad guy, or maybe they survive, but their whole world is just now screwed. And as with pretty much everything we do on this channel, that concept can also be applied to MMA. A bunch of times we've seen fighters get the win, but it came at either a cost to their reputation, their popularity, or they just ruined their careers in the process. Yep, I'm Balian from MMA On Point. Big up the MMA On Point channel members, guys. Also, cheers for all your support. And these are 10 wins that felt like losses. Number 10, Morab beats Jose Aldo. It took a little while for MMA fans to warm up to Morab Dvalishvili. First of all, he didn't speak English very well and was more of a takedown artist than a brawler, but after more and more videos came out and we saw him spin kicking drywall and jumping into frozen lakes, we got to see more of his personality, and by the time he got a performance of the night TKO of Marlon Moraes, yeah, that fight, he looked like one of the most fun and entertaining fighters at bantamweight. So he got a well-known opponent as a reward, Jose Aldo, on a pay-per-view. The fight was supposed to set him up for a title shot, but unfortunately it turned into the most boring fight on the card. Aldo didn't really throw much at all, and Morab would not stop trying to take him down. I think he tried 16 times and he didn't get anywhere. He got the win, but the guy he needed to impress, Dana White, was just not having it.
Morab didn't go after it like a guy that looks like he wants to fight for the title. We give you the opportunity to shine, and it's up to you to get out there and do it. That didn't happen tonight.
You know, it also didn't help that Morab could have fought for the title with a win, but his best mate Aljamain Sterling had the belt, and he wasn't going to fight him, was he?
You can still be friends and want what your friend has, you know what I mean? If that's what he wants to do, I can tell you how that story ends. It's not a good ending to that story.
So essentially, with the lackluster win and the fact that he didn't want to fight the champ, it felt like the fight with Aldo only moved Morab further back down the line. Number 9, Ben Askren submits Robbie Lawler. Bit hard to believe now for some of you, maybe, but at one point Ben Askren was looked at as possibly the most dominant fighter outside of the UFC. Some of his performances had been as one-sided as some of Khabib's, and he'd been a defending world champion in multiple promotions, and he was also 18-0, but he was content to retire and leave it at that, having never gone to the UFC. But 2 years later, and suddenly it gets announced that he was being traded for Mighty Mouse and he was going to the big show, and everyone got pretty excited, mainly because Dana also said it was never going to happen.
I came here to fight the best world and prove that I am. I want to compete, and so I'm ready to compete on March 2nd.
Ben came in super confident, and they gave him Robbie Lawler for his first fight. The whole thing was over in just about 2 minutes. It involved Ben getting slammed on his head, knocked unconscious, I'm pretty sure, then a bulldog choke, which Lawler never actually tapped to. The ref called off the fight because he thought he was unconscious. Now, if Robbie was or wasn't is kind of still debated to this day, unless I'm missing something, but Ben left that fight with still a big question mark next to his name.
Every fighter's only as good as their last performance, right? You have a great performance, everyone thinks you're the champ. You look like shit, everyone tells you you suck.
He was now 19-0, but it didn't really feel like we'd seen him have a proper debut, and a lot of fans also thought it was just a bullshit stoppage. And I'm not surprised, really, because it's got to be one of the most crazy and controversial debuts of all time. Number 8, Sean Strickland goes to war with Paulo Costa.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
If there's one man who's done well to get UFC fans on board recently, it's Sean Strickland. From the very first time he got to speak at a press conference, he had fans eating out of his hand. He's a trash-talking, speak his mind kind of guy and always promises violence in the cage. Now, going into the fight with Paulo Costa, things were no different.
You better hope the God's in your favor, because I'm gonna fucking beat your fucking dick into the fucking dirt.
You're gonna what?
Yeah, fuck yeah. All right, let's go. Another Sean Strickland war, and yeah, fans were all on board for a freaking slugfest. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. You know, Sean marched forward and was pouring at Paulo, who backpedaled the whole time.
It was kind of a boring fight, and the crowd didn't like it too much. He didn't exactly stake his claim at a title shot.
There were a lot of fans who jumped on Twitter and started complaining about it. You know, you promise violence and you get the iCarly meme. Obviously, it takes two to tango, but for the first time, a lot of the fan base who usually supported Sean started to turn on him and criticize the performance, even though he did pick up the win.
I hate having fights like those, but if the guy doesn't want to fight you, it makes it really hard, you know?
Of course, Luke Rockhold wanted to give his 2 cents after he'd fight clubbed it with Paulo.
He's like, oh, fucking go to the death. He fucking puts on his hillbilly fucking right-wing fucking bogan attitude when he's really just a fucking bitch.
Number 7, Paddy Piml gets the nod versus Jared Gordon. Going into his fourth UFC fight, Paddy the Baddy had already gotten a ton of attention from media and also a hell of a lot of fan support from people who found the down-to-earth Scouse eating machine a nice, fun and relatable bloke. He'd just tapped Jordan Levitt in London, making it 3 finishes, 3 performance of the night bonuses in the UFC, and although there were already a few fans who were criticising his abilities, he was still beloved by many. Unfortunately though, a lot of that took a sharp 180 after his next fight with Jared Gordon in Vegas. After a tough 3 rounds, it was a back and forth fight. Paddy had his moments, but so did Jared, and he'd picked it up towards the end of the fight. When the judges read the scorecards, they gave it to Paddy by unanimous decision, and that was just a decision a lot of fans didn't agree with.
I thought Jared won. I thought Jared Gordon won that fight.
And even though Paddy had won, it was close enough for people to say that he'd lost. And considering it was a step up in competition, people were saying he'd been exposed and wasn't as good as everyone thought. And Paddy also had no sympathy for how other people felt how the fight went.
Anyone that thinks he won that fight doesn't know what they're watching. How did anyone think he won that fight?
All of his haters just reloaded their firearms with more ammunition and just sprayed it across social media. Unfortunately, to make things even worse coming out of that fight, Piml was also injured, so we'd have to wait over a year to be able to rectify it with another performance. Number 6, Anderson Silva plays with Meyer. Right, it's 2010. Anderson Silva is the best fighter in the world. He's been defending the middleweight belt, looking unbeatable, and even just went up a weight class, smashed Forrest Griffin, entered the Matrix. At the same time, MMA is getting more and more popular, so much so that Flash Entertainment, a production company run by the Abu Dhabi government, wants to invest in the UFC. They buy a 10% share, and to celebrate, the UFC is heading to the UAE with a massive open-air arena show. Hell yeah, baby. The job of headlining that went to Anderson Silva, and he was going to defend his world title against Meyer. What a showcase for the UFC, a new international partner, but then the absolute worst thing happened. Anderson Silva just stopped fighting.
He shut down, and Dana White looks very upset.
It became immediately clear that the Spider felt absolutely no threat from Meyer and danced around him, toying with him instead of just, knocking him out.
I'm really embarrassed. I gave the belt to Ed and I said, you put it on him. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I think that says it all right there. I mean, Dana basically treated it like a loss. And this was right around the time they were talking about GSP Anderson Silva in a super fight. There were even talks that Dana was going to fire him, something that Chael Sonnen brought up during their rivalry.
If he ever goes out and acts like he did that night, yes, I would fire him. Yes.
And the consequences for Anderson ended up continuing way beyond just this one fight. Number 5, Michael Bisping gets too excited. Let's rewind back in time to 2007 when a man I'm sure you know, Michael Bisping, was still undefeated in the UFC at 14-0. Mike was a hot commodity. He just fought in England for the first time, with the UFC going to Manchester. They were coming back again, this time to London, and they wanted to give him a good opponent. On The Ultimate Fighter, Bisping had a rivalry with Matt Hamill, who had to pull out before making it to the finals of the show, and Bisping then went on to win.
He was picked right from the start to be the winner by Tito, and I was picked to be a training partner for his champion,
So now, 2 years removed, the UFC booked Matt vs. Mike in London, and the fight already had some steam coming off it. Mike walked out with a ton of support in the co-main event, and it turned out to be a very close fight. Very back and forth. Matt scored a bunch of takedowns, but also caught Bisping with some big shots, and when the scorecards were read, the judges gave it to Bisping by a split decision. And boy, were people not happy with that. Even in England, Bisping was being booed. He also wasn't exactly gracious in victory.
Who's the real winner of the Ultimate Fighter? The same one it always has been. Back to wrestling.
The reaction from fans around the world was even worse though. Till this day, many still call it the biggest robbery of all time. And even though Mike won, all it did was kind of turn him into a villain. Number 4, Husamar Palhares versus submission attempts. A lot has changed in the last 20 years of MMA, but Joe Rogan is still going on about what a monster Husamar Palhares is.
That guy he's particularly scary. He just could grab a hold of you and rip your shit apart, man.
Either way, if you don't know who Paul Harris is, he made a name for himself with 5 leg locks in the UFC. Problem was, he had this issue where he didn't want to let go of submissions when people were tapping, which is against the rules. He submitted Mike Pierce in Brazil. Again, he didn't let go of the sub, and Dana booted him out of the UFC.
And this is the second incident we've had. We cut him. He'll never fight in the UFC ever again.
Yeah, talk about a Pyrrhic victory. Even worse was when he went to the World Series of Fighting right after. He was given an immediate title shot, and what do you know? He won by heel hook in just 1 minute. And then he even defended the belt against John Fitch, again getting a leg lock in about 90 seconds. But then he got Jake Shields, and that fight was just a fucking disaster. The entire contest, whenever Palhares was losing, he literally just started raking Jake's eyes.
Watch your fingers. Watch your fingers. You see a ref? You do it over and over.
After about 3 rounds of that, when Shields was half blind, Husama locked in a Kimura, once again, yet refused to let go of it.
Now you can end someone's career here. That's it. Here it comes. There's the tap. Mazzagatti pounding on him.
You know, it's still down as a submission win for Paul Harris, but he lost his World Series of Fighting Championship and was kicked out of yet another promotion. And you call that a win.
Do you think a lot of the times it's those guys, like the other guy's fault, or does he really just hold too long?
He definitely holds too long.
Yeah.
Number 3, pissing hot. So yeah, getting a big win, but I guess cheating is definitely a Pyrrhic victory. Mainly because everyone thinks you're a wanker and you lose a lot of respect from the fans. Let's talk about when the youngest champion ever won a UFC title. Josh Barnett comes into the UFC, inside a year gets to fight Randy Couture for the belt, and he beats him. Wow, man. What a win. Oh, no, wait. He's tested positive for steroids 2 fights in a row. Gonna have to take that belt away. Sorry. But also, let's never overturn the result of that fight. Hey, you remember when Royce Gracie fought Sakuraba for 90 minutes? That was great. Did you know in 2007 on New Year's Eve, they rematched? And even better, it was in the US. It was headlined by Brock Lesnar. That's a pretty cool show. And they battled for 15 minutes, went to a judge's decision, and Royce got announced the winner. But of course, he also tested positive for nandrolone, so, you know, now everyone's going to just question his legacy back to UFC 1, right? To be fair, a lot of fans turned on him, and it's because he came back for one last fight. That one's also not been overturned. And of course, who can forget that time John Jones came back after all the controversies, was being cheered at the press conferences, even managed to knock out Daniel Cormier, won back the title. It was kind of an emotional moment. Until the next few days later, when it came out he tested positive for banned substances and was going to be stripped. So that was another victory that meant nothing. Don't do drugs, kids.
Don't, or else.
Number 2, Aljamain Sterling versus Piotr Jan. Oh dear, oh yes. Well, you knew this one was coming. In terms of a win feeling like a loss, I mean, there really aren't many better examples than when Aljamain Sterling won the UFC title. His championship fight with Piotr Jan was not going his way when Jan delivered that illegal strike to Aljo, a nasty knee that had him rocked. Now, usually in this situation, they give the guy a break or they take a point and everything continues as normal, but Aljo said he couldn't continue, so that changed everything. Illegal blow, the ref thought it was intentional, Jan gets disqualified. That meant Sterling was going to be the new champ via disqualification, something that had never happened before. Now, some fans looked at it and thought Aldo was faking and could have continued and said he acted his way to a world title. I mean, that's some Sylvester Stallone shit, surely. Whether you believed Aljamain Sterling and felt bad for him, or whether you thought he should get an Oscar for that performance, the guy was literally crying when they strapped him up. So yeah, talk about a Pyrrhic victory. Hold up, we got a couple of honourable mentions before we do number 1. Remember when Khamzat Chimaev completely missed weight, flipped everyone off and ruined a perfectly good pay-per-view? Well, he might have beat Kevin Holland the next day, but a lot of people were just pissed at him for months afterwards. Obviously, I also don't think many people were happy when Jermaine Durandamy beat Holly Holm for the title. There's nothing against GDR, she's a legendary kickboxer, but shit, you know, she hit her twice after the bell, so it felt like she literally cheated to win the title. You might have also thought about when Leon Edwards fought Nate Diaz. Leon beat him up for 5 rounds, smashed him, but then right at the end of the fight, Nate has him really badly hurt. So he takes the moral victory on that one, even though Leon technically got the win. And yeah, I guess Mike Jackson's win over CM Punk was just, I mean, Dana hated it, the fans booed it. It's because he was just showboating while beating up a WWE wrestler. And then the win meant even less when it was overturned because he tested positive for the chronic. All right, well, number 1, the story of Jesse Taylor. All right, so if you've never heard the tale of Jesse Taylor, it begins way back on season 7 of The Ultimate Fighter in 2008. Stay with me, kids. After winning 4 fights in the Ultimate Fighter house, Jesse was going to the finale of the show with a shot at becoming the Ultimate Fighter. That's when Dana took the cast out to Vegas to celebrate. Jesse got really drunk and started harassing people, and Dana just straight up cut him from the UFC before he even got a chance to fight in the show's finale.
You're not ready for this, dude. You're not ready.
Flash forward to 2017, 10 years later. The Ultimate Fighter is somehow still going, and they do a redemption season. Jesse had been all over the world fighting in the meantime, and surprisingly gets a second chance at his UFC dreams and is brought onto the show. It's a pretty good story, I'm not going to lie. And once again, he beat everyone and made it to the finale, and this time he won and got crowned the Ultimate Fighter. But for a second time, he ruined his career because he tested positive for steroids. Finally won the show, but at what cost? It's hard to feel sorry for him because, come on, man. Same thing happened to a guy called Saul Rogers. He won a place in the finale, beating everyone, including Ryan Hall, before he got to the UFC. But he lied on his visa application. And when Dana found out, he just cut him off from the UFC forever. I don't know, guys. Some juice just ain't worth the squeeze. All right, everybody, fun idea for today's video. I thought it was. Of course, today's video wouldn't be possible without the marvelous editing skills of Max Randall. Check him out on social media for all his hot MMA takes. And he has a new channel as well, The Combat Arcade. You can check that out on the YouTubes. Give him some support. Of course, as well, want to say thank you to the MMA On Point channel members. You guys are the shit, okay? Thanks, guys, for the support every week. If you want to join them, click the button down below. There's a lot of info and cool stuff to be involved with. If you did enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up. I do appreciate that as well. And subscribe. We do, a lot of videos every week if you're not subscribed here. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, guys. I'm going to go now. Bye.